Cost of Victory, Book 1 of the Unseen Scar series by C.R. Saxon. Chapter 5. He's going to find you here. John handed Ferdinand a mug of iron-rich soup. It doesn't matter. Persistent people always get what they want, eventually. Though Ferdinand took the soup, it was all he could do not to gag. Trying to ignore the rather pungent scent, the skeleton considered what he'd learned of the families of the students from Azute. The only reason Zhao had anyone left was because his mom and younger sister were traveling at the time, and Zhao was one of the lucky ones. Here you could have killed 2 more. I'm horrible. How can I think that's lucky? The least he could do was face all of them, but I can't let them know it was me. I'd hurt them again. Sitting in the shade of a tree, the 2 boys enjoyed silence until Ferdinand couldn't hold back anymore. Who came? Healer Ilu? What are you talking about? I know you called a healer. No, I didn't. John leaned back hard against the tree. Miss Hoya wouldn't let me leave the room. Besides, you're doing well enough. I guess you didn't need one. I know she didn't call one. She doesn't know how. She didn't leave your side for more than a day. John's face scrunched for a moment, and I didn't tell anyone. What did she do? Is she a healer? But how does she disappear and reappear at will? She sat on the floor with her eyes closed the entire time. Don't ask me why. Then she didn't touch me. No, she didn't move at all. It was creepy. Sat there like a statue, never even flinched. John shivered. That's not possible. You're right. Why would anyone want to save you? Have you considered it? John changed topics. You know that's the first thing Zhao will ask. What, the show? It isn't my responsibility. He's the science lead. It won't affect me much. What are you talking about? Of course it will. You remember how awful it was the last 2 times. Do you really want to suffer through that again? John pointed at the soup as a hint to start eating. Ignoring the gesture, Ferdinand mumbled, I'm already the school joke. It's everyone else who has something to lose. You weren't a joke. John wavered dishonestly. Looks like he's here. No, he wasn't ready to face that child. How badly have you hurt him? There you are. I've been looking everywhere for you. Did you leave the face of the earth? Zhao exclaimed, sliding to a halt where the 2 of them sat, and giving a winning smile. Maybe. Does it matter? He's as energetic as always. Ferdinand hid his eyes in guilt behind shaggy hair. That grin. Zhao's Uncle Yuaru smiled just like that every time they talked. It didn't matter how much he hurt, until the end. Alarms wailed, beating against his ears. Ever so slowly, the man's pain-racked body eased. Just like that, Ferdinand failed again. The skeleton's heart twisted at that memory. Stop. I'm not the one hurting. You destroyed all those people. Don't pretend to feel sorrow now. I need to talk to my idea man about the show. I'm sorry, Zhao Zi. I'm not up for nonsense today. This isn't nonsense. It's important. Zhao folded his arms, pouting like a little child. I'm surprised at you. What for this time? Not only was the lead behaving like a spoiled fool, but Ferdinand couldn't see any sign of distress about him. Is he actually okay? Acting like you don't care about Family Week. This is the crowning event of the year. This is the time to show our families what we can do, what we're made of. We can't disappoint everyone like last time. Ugh, what a disaster. I'm embarrassed just thinking about it. Zhao covered his face dramatically with a hand. I honestly don't care. Talking about family didn't trip him up. Well, I do, and so do the rest of us. Zhao scratched his head. My little sister's coming for this one. It'll be the only time she'll see the islands. I bet she's grown a foot since I saw her last. Peeking through his hair, Ferdinand watched Zhao's blue-black eyes glisten at the thought. More guilt beat into the tinkerer. Sorrow shone through the lead's mask. I hurt him. You stole everything from him. If your point's a guilt trip, you're failing. Yeah, I guess it'd sound like that. I want to show her how amazing we can be. The soup cooling in his hands suddenly had Ferdinand's full attention. Zhao loved his little sister more than life itself. I'm glad she's safe at least. I haven't thought about it. Crestfallen, Zhao worked to scrape himself off the ground. But I'll consider it this evening. You could come up with something on your own. I've been trying, but the only one of us with any proficiency to perform is John, and no one's going to listen to a 2-hour solo piano act. Guilt-ridden or not, Ferdinand couldn't help but roll his eyes. That's not what I meant. It's okay to think about things which haven't been done. We don't have to replicate others. Like what, idea lord? Well, what kind of entertainment do you enjoy? What things do you look for to fill your time? Zhao considered this for a moment. I don't much care for sitting through long performances. Don't get me wrong, the skill and precision I appreciate. It's really the only thing I admire. But everything's been done to death. What's so entertaining about watching something when you know what's going to happen? Then what would you like to happen? Ferdinand asked. Why am I the one trying to make a thinker think? I don't know. It'd be nice to see something new, but how does that help us? Zhao glanced at John for support. A deep sigh left Ferdinand. Is the concept of unconfined thinking so foreign? High and mighty, aren't we? Talk to me tomorrow. But we haven't. I said I'd consider it this evening. I'm busy at the moment. Zhao shot him a critical look. Busy with what? The two-full mug was still making him gag, trying to fulfill a different, unreasonable demand. What? Lunch. He hasn't done more than look at it, John chimed in. You can eat while we brainstorm. I won't find it rude, Zhao offered, obviously curious. Ferdinand paled to a rather sickly alien color. Eating in public wasn't something he made a habit of. How do I get out of this and make John leave me alone? I want to go to my room. Not your lab? John asked, confused. Slowly, pitifully, Ferdinand shook his head. Liar. That was all John needed. Shooing Zhao away, he and Ferdinand walked to the boats. No arguments were made, no conversation was had, while they traveled to the dorms. Ferdinand waved John off at the 3rd floor, and continued up, only he didn't stop on the 4th. The last place he wanted to be was his suite. What right did he have to annoy his suite mates? So he continued to the roof, waiting for the dead of night and an easy escape. Finally, after a lifetime, John was about to reunite with his island brothers. A smile spread across his lips and his eyes teared up. He'd waited months. How much he missed his island family was second only to how much he missed his real one. Being in their presence, soaking up their energy and joy, this is what he needed. No more fighting and nightmares and stress. He wanted home and love and silliness more than anything else. Opening the door, he spread his arms wide and called out, "Gents, I'm back." The response from the two in the common room was underwhelming, to say the least. Why did it feel so sullen? It was only slightly lighter than his time with Ferdinand. After everything I went through, I need their joy. Pain contorted his face. Tuel flew overhead while Ganji jumped up and dashed over. John! Ganji exclaimed as he hugged his sorely missed sweetmate. You're finally back! What's wrong? These gents aren't Ferdinand. It's fine to feel. John found himself breathing hard as tears stung sharply. Reaching up, he grabbed the flying energist Tuel and smothered both sweetmates in a painfully tight hug. I've missed you so much. Where is everyone? Elu's with his dad, and Marcus is at his session. The tiny floating shadow answered somberly. Session? John released them, even if the two looked stressed. Seeing those faces again brought more relief than he realized. There was always kindness and understanding in Ganji's eyes, and not just because the gent was a telepath. Whenever Tuel, the afternoon shadow with snow-white hair, came flying, he knew the 5 of them were going to have fun. Counseling sessions are mandatory for everyone from Azute. Surprise. Then the guilt and remorse hit. With all that happened, I forgot about everyone here. How could I forget about Marcus? All that happened? Ganji repeated John's thought. What happened? Panting, John wiped away his tears and cleared his mind. I can't. I'm sorry. Looking down worried his sweetmates. It was a gesture he never made before leaving for South Chuzo. All John wanted was a hug and to talk, but he wasn't allowed. The superintendent made that perfectly clear. Without hesitation, Tuel and Ganji wrapped their arms around him, obviously wondering what happened to change their island brother. John squeezed harder and didn't let go until the door opened. Looking back, he saw Marcus walk in. Knives stabbed deep in his chest. Marcus was disheveled and had lost weight. The gent's eyes were still red on the edges. Pushing away from Tuel and Ganji, the thinker ran over and hugged the gent as tight as he had the other two. I'm so sorry, Marcus. I'm so sorry. This only stirred up painful memories for both of them, but John couldn't think of anything else. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry. You weren't fast enough for you. Ganji turned confused eyes on John as that thought floated through his mind. A quarter moon and 1 trillion stars filled the surrounding black. 15 millennia of human history. Why did it happen now? Why was I the one? Why did they ask me? Standing, Ferdinand looked out over the cold sea, shoes pressed hard against the parapet wall. Of all the people she could have asked, why me? The least competent of them all. Leaning forward, the roof's lip cut deep into his abdomen. If he went any further, he'd be on the ground 5 stories below. Complaining muscles couldn't outdo his twisting heart. Hands on top of the parapet, Ferdinand took in the view below. His heart quickened, not from fear, anticipation, excitement, hope. These sensations should have scared him, sent him running. Feeling like this was wrong, thinking these thoughts, imagining the ground meeting him, wanting to end it all. It was wrong, bad, not allowed. I'm a horrible person. I have no right to live when I killed so many. What right do you have to peace? Dizziness hit, causing him to stagger. What right did he have to peace, to rest or relief? Backing away from the edge, Ferdinand focused on deeply burying his horrible desire, hoping it'd disappear. Alone. I need to be alone. Aren't you always? Who'd want to be around you? No one was nearby, but this wasn't the place for solitude. Haunted by the pain and sorrow of those he failed, Ferdinand headed to the boats. To be alone, to get away, there was only one place, only one thing offering any form of relief. Something cold and eerie ran up his spine, forcing him to look around. As far as he could tell, no one else was about. Was he being watched? Hesitating, he strained his eyes and ears, searching for any sign of life. The feeling wouldn't go away, but neither could he find anything to substantiate the warning. Should I go back? Someone knows you can't be trusted. Wringing his hands, he chewed on his lip, trying to decide. I can't stay here. I can't. The stress, the nightmares, the guilt. He needed some kind of respite. Need outweighing paranoia, Ferdinand stole a boat and pushed off. Inhuman green eyes watched from the shadows as Ferdinand rowed out to sea. Oya knew why she was out roaming her new playground, but her friend was exhausted, so why was he? She wasn't the only one playing spy, either. There was a presence that had been following her since they left the hospital. Not the orbs, those were different, and not the same presence that got her to the hospital, but a new one. Whoever it was, could whoever keep up with her? One way or another, she owed whoever thanks for helping her friend. Once Ferdinand glided away, she moved. Bare feet took one step after another into the ocean, deep into Uyan. Waves reared up and seized her, pushing her back, pulling her to the bottom. Her heart froze inside her chest. But not from fear. What is this feeling? She tried moving, but her very soul refused. Death didn't scare her, but now wasn't the time. There was someone to build and someone to protect. A promise was made she must uphold. Oya struggled and fought until Uyan understood. I'm sorry, old friend. I know what I am, but I can't let you take me yet. Warmth filled her, and a compromise was offered, a final gift from Uyan, her oldest friend. Oya broke the surface, an infinity of stars filled her view. They always intrigued her, but... Shaking her head, she forced herself back to her purpose. Negotiations between her and her oldest friend took too long. The boat was out of sight. A grin and a laugh burst from her. It didn't matter how far away he was. Those strings were always there. Yes, Ferdinand only had a few connections, and they were dim and muted gray, but they shot out over the water. A perfect trail. Diving beneath the waves, she took off. Like a dolphin, she flew through the water, coming up only when her lungs screamed for air. The swim was long and the distance exciting. When the strings finally brought her to land, her muscles were numb. The little boat was high up on the beach, and Ferdinand was nowhere to be seen. This didn't discourage her. She only smirked and followed his strings inland. Feet flew across the worn path. With each step, his muscles eased until their complaints ceased altogether. Afraid to stop, Ferdinand pushed on until there was nothing left inside him to overcome. Nothing dragging him back. Breathing deeply, shaking from head to toe, his mind raced. All the numbers ran around through his head, telling him if grandmother could still be saved. That unforgivable delay. But if the agent was quick... The biohazard room offered one solace. It was a one-man room. He was alone. No one could see him do anything. Why? His insides were tearing themselves apart. Heart racing, he stood there panting, looking for some acceptable way to vent this pent-up frustration. Running? No. Breaking something was rude and childish, and counterproductive to his goals. Even inside this isolated chamber, screaming would be heard this time of day. The only thing the room offered was solitude. I hate this, he breathed sharply through clenched teeth. Ah! Squatting down, Ferdinand found the one thing he could safely attack. With everything he had, he pounded stick legs. The world spun and jumped and tilted around him, causing him to stagger. He skidded across the ground, panting and retching. This might not have been the best choice, but running was the only piece available. So he ran until he had nothing left. Pathetic. Good evening came out of nowhere. Soon, impossible green eyes hovered above an odd grin, a Cheshire grin. Startled, Ferdinand winced. Once his stone mask was in place, he forced himself to sit up and make his voice steady. Good evening, Miss Oya. Seems you've caught me. Would it so? It would seem so indeed. He grinned. Sentence structure was proving itself a challenging barrier for her. Unsurprisingly, she switched to her native tongue. Call me Oya, not Miss. My apologies. I was being respectful. Titles are normal here. Taking the opportunity, Ferdinand pulled his green tin out. What does a murderer know of respect? Mint filled his mouth and throat, calming his stomach. Why is she here? Liu Ya Zhao teaches languages, and is better at it. I'm a lousy teacher. His mind stopped cold. How long had he been back and he hadn't contacted his apprentice? He really was a lousy teacher. After they finished, he'd message Elby and set up their next lesson. But Oya, there's nothing better I can offer her, so why is she wasting her time with me? Elby didn't have a choice. Ferdinand was the only tinkerer old enough to mentor. Even apprenticing Yu for 2 years. He was a lousy teacher to her, too. How much further ahead would both young tinkerers be if they had a decent mentor? Oya waved a hand to draw his attention. I'd rather you show me a close friendship than a distant respect. Huh? He never thought of that. Here I'm referred to as Lord Ferdinand. I promise I'll always call you Oya, if you never call me Lord. Happiness danced in her exotic green eyes. That's a promise I can keep. Do you run often? I'm not supposed to. Sunken cheeks pinkened. Being caught was shameful. That's why you run at odd hours? I saw you that night at the hospital. Face burning, he hid behind his overgrown, shaggy hair. I'm not supposed to run, but it's a hard craving to ignore. You can't follow a simple rule like that? How selfish are you? Fascination danced on those shapely lips. Why not replace it with something else? An unsteady laugh escaped him. Running's the compromise to what I actually want to do. I see. Then what do you want to do? It's forbidden. That bad, huh? She smirked, turning crazed eyes to the night sky, as if searching for something up there. Ferdinand blushed deeper. No one would understand, and explaining wasn't an option. No, it'd be bad for my family. Must be hard being rich and powerful. Huh? You aren't the daughter of a king or grand duke? I only called you Miss because I didn't know your title. Mad laughter spilled out of her, making her eyes all but glow with their usual wild craze. I've no such lineage. Oh? Ferdinand thought. But you must be connected to someone of importance. Everyone at this school is. After 2,000 years, most everyone with abilities made their way to power. Interesting. Not sure where to go with that. Ferdinand changed directions. Are you here to work on your common? But of course. Despite the heat from his face dissipating, his cheeks warmed up again. Maybe she doesn't realize I'm not needed anymore. Even as he thought this, something cold sat heavily in the center of his chest. You know, Liu Yaozha is trained to teach languages. She's a better choice. The girl they gave me to when I arrived, you know about her. It was easy information to find, and he had plenty of time on his hands during their travels back to the islands. Why would I want someone else? You're amazing. What's amazing about you? His face lit on fire with those last 2 words. I don't understand. Why? No one comes to me unless they need something only I can do, and the Za is better for everything she needs. Is Luya her title, or Za? Those words are cumbersome to say together. What? Oh, Za is her title. What kind of title is it? It means princess. Ah, she likes being called princess. I don't know, it's just, we'll be required to use titles properly our entire lives. Aside from family, and those who spend an inordinate amount of time together, it's rude not to address others properly. Then you're close to John. I haven't heard you use his title. Ferdinand chuckled. No, we've been stuck together since I was born. It probably won't end till one of us dies. Till you kill him. Then he's older than you. By half a year. No more stalling. If you want help with common, we'll speak common. Fine. How do you say meanie head in common? An exhausted chuckle escaped Ferdinand when she crossed her arms, pouting. As Oya stumbled over foreign words, she grabbed the thin, blue-gray string connecting Ferdinand and John. With it she eased her friend to sleep. Where his heart should be was a gaping wound, weeping and bleeding. In the short time she'd known him, the infection had thrived. It was consuming his entire chest. How much pain does this cause your soul? How much agony are you in, dear friend? The clouds darkening his mind were nearly black and cracks were forming. How do I fix this? Reaching out to the blue-gray string, she brushed back his hair and delved deep in their minds. Ferdinand and John were an interesting pair. Their relationship was odd. Whether they knew it or not, they'd been competing for some time, competing out of envy of the other. The younger one's talents far exceeded the older. This left John fighting constantly to keep up, but always falling behind. Ferdinand's reason was buried much deeper. The complexities of his brain were quite the challenge to navigate after rooting around John's head. There was no doubt about the older boy's intelligence, but it was perfectly organized. Playing in John's mind was like roaming the aisles of an endless library. Ferdinand's, however, was a galactic theme park. It was so active, so beautiful. Ideas floated around as dreams awaiting life. Each idea twinkled around her, brighter, more brilliant than the stars in the heavens, and just as numerous. As she roamed, pathways became available for them to travel quickly and efficiently from one place to another. Those stars met up and danced before splitting and finding other partners, except for one pair. They came together and all but seemed to talk, deciding on a proper course. A light so exceedingly bright it put the other thoughts to shame, exploded from the pair, then it dimmed. The two were replaced with something rather interesting. An assembly of gears turned in rhythm, slowly growing in complexity as more parts and pieces joined. By the time it soared toward its next destination, it had become as amazing and beautiful as the insides of an ancient gear clock. Is this how his mind works? No wonder he comes up with the most magnificent inventions. Continuing on, Oya searched until she noticed a shadowed corner. What's this? Each step closer was met with resistance. She'd clear one obstacle, only to have another appear. This was a forbidden place, one he tried forgetting, one he wouldn't let himself see, and one he didn't want others finding. She managed stopping her last step as the ground vanished. You really don't want anyone here. Placing her own stepping stone, Oya reached the dark recess and a door with no handle. There had been one once, but it was removed. What don't you want to think about? Reaching out a hand, she pictured a knob, grasped it, and turned. Inside sat a ragged little boy, looking longingly as John and a group of giants played and hugged, being far more loving and affectionate than any family she'd ever seen. The happy display continued to its end. Then came another, and another after that. This continued. With each memory, John and the giants got a little older, as did the Ferdinand beside her. I see. Walking forward, she hugged the Ferdinand who couldn't be more than 7. That little face was already showing signs of malnutrition and a pain that ate away at him until he became the boy currently sleeping beside her. Tears filled the young child's eyes, but they didn't fall.